Hello, I'm Michael, and in today's video we're going to focus on colorimeters like this one here from X-Rite, and I'll show you how you can use them to get calibration for your monitors to allow you to have accurate colors throughout. So having accurate colors is very important, which is why I use devices like this one for ever since I started with photography. And it's important to ensure that the colors and the tonality of the photos I see on my display will look the same on the calibrated displays of other professionals. And it's also a prerequisite if I want to do soft proofing for print. So I can only do proper soft proofing if I have a calibrated monitor. And that's very important for me. What I cannot ensure with a calibrated monitor though is that the colors as I see them will look the same on all devices for every user, because I cannot control where my photos are viewed and who views them. But having a calibration, a proper calibration, still gives me a good base, and the photos will look good on most devices. So let's now move a bit closer to my editing environment here, and I show you how you can use this device here, the i1 color display, together with the iProfiler software, which is also from X-Rite. And I walk you through all the steps, and also if you happen to have a device from DataColor, I think those are called the Spyder calibration devices, I think this video will still be interesting because many of the settings will be very similar, and also the principles I talk about. So let's check this out and have a look. And the first step in any calibration, no matter which software and device you use, is to give your monitors some time to warm up so they reach their proper brightness and so the calibration can work properly. So for my monitors, usually after 10 minutes should be fine to do a calibration. So that's the first step. Second step is insert your calibration device into your PC, Mac, whatever you're using. And also make sure that the drivers are installed. So if you purchase such a device, you also get some drivers, and typically you also get a software. For me, it's the iProfiler, which we're going to start in a minute. For DataColor, they also have their own software which you can use. And there's even an open source software, which I'm going to link in the video below. It also has many settings and can be used with many of the devices. So the first step, if you're on Windows, and I believe on Mac this option is also available, you have in the display options here a setting which is called change brightness automatically when lighting changes. You want to disable it. It's very important if you calibrate your monitors that the brightness you set on your display will be left like that. If you change it afterwards, then your calibration will no longer be accurate. Also, you see here on Windows, I have this brightness slider, which I'm going to use to change the brightness during the calibration for my Dell display. So for my external monitor, I have some settings here on the pane. So I have hardware settings for the brightness, but for the display on the Dell XPS, I don't have this. I still can change the brightness here in the system settings, and I'm going to use this typically in the calibration. There's a step where you have to dial in the brightness, where the colorimeter measures the brightness, and you can change the brightness here to match it or to bring it to the desired level. As I said, for a hardware monitor or for a monitor, an external one, you would typically do this in the settings of the monitor. That being said, let's close this dialog and bring up the iProfiler. And this iProfiler software and also other calibration softwares can be used to calibrate multiple displays. For the iProfiler, I want to display or want to calibrate now this display, the external one, and what I just do is I move it up there, and this basically makes it active for that monitor. So I'll now create a calibration profile for the monitor on which the software is displayed. For other software, you might have some drop-down menu where you select which software you run which monitor you run the calibration on, but the iProfiler works like that. Okay, so what you see here, I'm here in the advanced mode. So the basic mode gives me a few less settings, but I'm here in the advanced mode to show you really all there is and also explain a bit more. Typically, I think you're fine with the basic mode. It's a bit quicker. You don't need to worry about many settings. Most of the time the software detects the default value, which also in the advanced mode I'll not change. So yeah, if you're unsure, just go with basic, should give you a good result. But as I said, we're gonna look at the advanced settings too. Here under licensing, you see that I have license by having this device attached for calibrating monitors and projectors. What I cannot calibrate are printers and scanners, but I don't need this. So that being said, here on the left side, I have here a few options. Under display, this profiling, quality and uniformity. And what we want to do, we want to profile. So I click on profiling, which brings me to the display settings. So this is really the most settings you have to make, and you have to make them in any software. So I'm gonna walk you through it. First of all, here we see both displays, which I have attached here. So the left, that's basically my Dell, and the EV2333W, that's the ISO. It's a very old display, but it's still working. And yeah, what I want to calibrate now is this one. An important setting is here in this drop-down menu. So there are different technologies for the displays. And I have selected white LED for both because I know both displays use LED backlight and they use this simple WLED technology, WLED technology, but there are others. For example, other external monitors might also use the CCFL, the older ones, or the wide gamut CCFL. It's still used for some of the ISO monitors. So the wide gamut ones are usually the ones which can display a larger color space, like Adobe RGB. And then we also have the RGB LED, which is basically, if you have a backlight, LED backlight technology, the RGB LEDs are usually used also for the wide gamut displays. So for example, I think the Dell displays with the 4K, they have a wider gamut, and I think they use the RGB LED. But if you're unsure, there's a page or a home page which you can check for the technology. So here on this page, displayspecifications.com, you have different brands listed. There will be different monitors, and yeah, you can check if your display is in that list and then see which technologies it uses. After those settings, there's also here the white point, and let's look at the drop down. You have different CIE standards here, and for us as photographers, D65 is the right one to use. It will try to match 6500 Kelvin color temperature, which is for daylight, and yeah, this should usually give you good representation, color representation that you can use to compare to modern print technologies on modern papers. So it should look good for that. And now here's the most important setting, and that's the luminance. I usually set it for a custom value which is 110. That's just from experience for me, because this value largely depends on your editing environment. So if you're, for example, in a very dark room, you want to set this much lower, otherwise all your images will be also too dark. And the opposite is also true. If you're in a very bright room, you need to put this target luminance much brighter to compensate for it. Otherwise, all your images will be too bright. So that's difficult to get right. So this comes also a bit with experience. So something between 100 and 120 is usually good for normally lit rooms. If you're only doing print preparation, so really going for publishing, usually you might want to set it lower, maybe even 80. But yeah, I go with like 110 or 120, and yeah, this gives me good results, which also look good on other screens like my cell phone. So yeah, that's a good value to use. Down here, the tone curve, the gamma, that's very important, and you should typically leave this at standard, which is the 2.2 curve. And this ensures that the tonality in the images is displayed correctly. If you use the wrong curve, the images will be too bright and might be less contrasty. It could also be the opposite. They're too contrasty, the black tones are kind of squished together, stuff like that can happen if you use the wrong curve. 2.2 is kind of the standard, so you should leave it like that. Then we have the contrast ratio, which I just leave at native. This is also an advanced setting which I've never touched. Just want to show it. Flare correct. I don't select this because you should avoid to have flare on your display in the first place. So also direct sunlight shouldn't be on your display. So I have the light there to the side, but it's mostly indirect light. So I have kind of a controlled environment here. And as it gets darker in the evening, I usually switch on the screen bar plus from BenQ, which I have. And yeah, this provides some fill light here and yeah, helps me to get the lighting in my room roughly the same. Also, I want to quickly show there's an app which is called Lux Light Meter. And with this app, yeah, you can get a reading of the brightness in the room. And yeah, it's not 100% accurate, but you can still use it to get an idea how bright your room is and yeah, find the value which you want to match throughout the day. If you have some change in the light from the outside, you would see this here, and yeah, you can compensate for it through adding some fill light like this screen bar plus or stuff like that. And yeah, also here this ambient light smart control. This would be the software solution to compensate for changing light environment. Here the colorimeter would take an additional reading for the environment lighting and adjust the profile based on that. But I leave this off also because I don't want to add another setting into the software. So I want a proper profile without any artificial changes based on my lighting environment, which might be different, especially when I'm on the road. So yeah, this is another thing which is very difficult if you're on the road. This whole stuff I was talking about, controlled lighting environment, will not work anyways, but yeah, that's just the thing that happens. But in the office, you should try to keep it constant. Now, once I have made those settings, I just press next. Here's another thing where everything is left on default. This ICC profile version, I think if you're on a Mac, the default will be version 4. And you should maybe check this because for some systems, so Windows, for example, I think it has some incompatibilities with version 4. So you want to make sure that version 2 is selected here. Otherwise, I don't change anything. And now we come to the patch set. So if you're in basic mode, you will not be able to change it. You'll just have 118 patches here. I found that for my Dell, a medium patch set is required to get a better calibration. So I will have more colors which are displayed and measured and used for the calibration. And there's even a large patch set. So it will take longer, the calibration. For me, medium is a good compromise. So I get enough patch sets for a good calibration and it still doesn't take forever. So after making those settings, I continue. And now we are at the final screen, the measurement screen. And here's one final important setting, which is the adjust brightness, contrast and RGB gains manually. You want to have this checkbox active. This is what I was talking about in the beginning. Even if you're just using a notebook where you don't have any hardware controls for the brightness, you can still use the system settings for Windows, the display settings, and on the Mac there will be something similar to change the brightness and dial it in. And we'll see in a second what that means. So I first click up here on the start measurement now. I'm not sure, in the video you'll not see it, maybe in this video. There's a little shift in color when I click on that because it will deactivate any profile which was active before. So set it back to whatever setting I have in the hardware here. And now software tells me first I need to get the device and put it in the center of the monitor. So here for the X-Rite, I just turn this around, which reveals the sensor. And then there's some counterweight, which I can use here in the center. I Sometimes it helps to angle the monitor a bit to avoid that this one here is hanging loose. So I might do that. Bring it down a bit. Just make sure that it sits flush against the center of the screen. And now here on the left you see brightness is active. I could also click the others, but I know that I cannot control contrast or the RGB values on my monitor. I just have the controls for brightness, so that's why I just have this one active. But if you have a more professional monitor, you could switch on the others too and be able to adjust them in hardware. Now when I press next, the first step of the calibration starts, which is dialing in the proper brightness. So it will show a few colors, also gray, and then on the left side you will see where your current brightness of the display sits versus the desired one. So I had the target luminance of 110, and you see here it currently sits at 105. So what I would need to do now, go into the hardware settings for the monitor and bump up the brightness, which I would do if I could, because this display is so old now. I have it like 10 years. I'm at the max. So I think in the beginning it was capable of doing like 250. Now it's capable of doing 105, and that's it. Thankfully that's okay. So it's just at the edge of what I need. So I don't need to bring it any higher, but yeah, I think it's time to get a new monitor soon. But for now, it still works. If it drops beneath 100, I might need to buy a new display. So let's just assume I have adjusted the brightness. You would see on the left here where you have this orange bar that it would move up if I increase the brightness, and goal is to get it right in the middle. And after that, I press next. And what will now happen is the calibration software will now cycle through all the colors in the patch set. So like the 220 colors, it will display them here on the monitor. You see now it starts with some shades of red. The colorimeter reads them, and via the driver it's fed back, the measurement is fed back into the software. Now the software has the known color which it displays and the color which was red, and yeah, those two might have some disparity. So this disparity or delta can then be used by the software to create the color profile for that monitor. And this then used to kind of shift the colors into the direction so they properly represent what we selected. So the CIE D65, so the proper white balance, the proper brightness, stuff like that will be now ensured by the color profile. This takes now some time, so once it's through, roughly 3 or 4 minutes, we're going to continue with the next step. Okay, so software is finished. I can now remove the device. I turn this around again to protect the sensor or the lens. And now when I press next here, I can now save the measurement. First of all, here in the patch set, you see kind of the before and after, so the changes that are now done by the profile. When I press next, I'll be able to save this profile. So per default, we have here the name of the monitor, the date, and .icm. For the profile, it could also be ICC. Sometimes some profiles are called ICC. Here on Windows, I think ICM is sometimes used. I leave that as it is. I can set up a profile reminder, which would remind me every 3 weeks to recalibrate my monitor. I don't have this active. I do this myself. So basically checking the quality of the calibration regularly, which is important, especially for my Dell here. So after my travel through Costa Rica, when I got back 3 months later, I checked it, and yeah, the delta, which I'll show you in a second, and what you get after checking the quality was quite high. I think something around 5, which is not very good. So I usually aim for something in the average beneath 1. And so after saving it, let's just do this. First of all, I can go here into a little before and after check, where I can see for the different colors what the profile did, or if it did anything. Before I already had a profile active, so I won't see much of a change here. And then down here, there's a little button which you have if you're in advanced mode. I don't think if you have it in the basic mode. So this is the display QA. And that's the first thing I do after calibration. I directly want to check how accurate it is. So that means another measurement, but this time it's just here, those 24 patches. So I click on Start Measurement now. It will again ask me to put the calibration device onto the monitor, the center of the screen. Let's just do that. And now the process is similar to the calibration. It will again circle through this small patch set, read the colors it displays, and then it will calculate a delta, which it will display as a report in the end. And this is the quality measurement, which I can also add to some kind of graph, a trending graph. And yeah, I can check this over time. So I will not recalibrate my monitor every month. But what I will do this quality measurement every few weeks. And if the quality, let's just have a look now where it is. Let's go to next here. So here you see the quality. So all patches average is 0.6, which is very good. Then we have 0.4 for the 90%, and then we have a small set of those 24, which shows an average of 1.5, and the max delta 2.5. So it's one of those which are marked here, the gray and the blue. So if this was now too high, so if in a few weeks I repeat this and those values go even higher, I might want to recalibrate and try to bring down the values. So down here you see this add to trending. If I click on this and now we go to next, we see here the trending line, and you see here there was a delta of 0.74. It went up a bit. Now we did some new calibrations and now we have a delta which is much lower. And for the Dell I have even more measurements here, because often I don't have this external monitor when I'm traveling or when I'm not here at this office somewhere else. I usually only have the Dell with me, and for this I usually do some more measurements. But yeah, that's it. Afterwards we go back to home, and if you're in the advanced mode, you'll also see up here on the left side there's this button for quality, which will also directly bring you to this quality measurement, which, as I said, you should do often enough. Now, finally, let's first close this program. I think we are through with it. I want to show you one final thing you can do to ensure that what you now have in terms of colors here is really what you want. Because I like to trust that software and everything, but I also like to trust my eyes. And what you can always do if you have some printed images, I have this in form of a calendar and some other test images, you get those now, bring up some images in Photoshop, and now control the result by just looking at the image in Photoshop versus the printed one. And this way you get an idea if it's correct to what the printing was. Also, you are more confident when you later print, because you know, that's how it looks. There's a possibility that the print looks a bit different. That's also the part where soft proofing comes in. So in Photoshop you would have to activate soft proofing to get a good representation. But still, you can use this to really build some additional confidence in your profiling. So let me quickly show you how I would do that. So I typically do the check currently with my calendar here. So I have some of my favorite images, and what I do, I bring up the image in Photoshop. And before I continue, one thing I just noticed when looking at the video, you might have seen that the screen here on the Dell looks much darker than this one. But the reason for this is this one is much more prone to the angle to changes in brightness when you're looking at it from an angle. So this one here, it looks same brightness if I look from there or straight on. For the Dell, it's much different. So just to quickly explain why there was such a huge difference throughout the video, so you might already have wondered about that. But let's continue. So what I will usually do, I switch on the screen bar plus here, make it a bit brighter. And then I bring my calendar, the photo on the calendar, down here so I can look at the colors, and then I compare it to what I see on this screen. And I have different images. For example, here I have one which is largely blue. So I use this image typically to check the blues, make sure there's no color shift into cyan direction, stuff like that. Then I have other images which show largely green, like this one, for example. I like to use this to check the green tones. And I also have like very colorful images, which are also important for me to get right, because I like colorful images, and especially the red tones and also the magentas have to be correct. And for this, I like to use this image here. So I typically put it here, look at it, the different colors, and compare it. And for some papers, I might even have to activate the profiling, which I do here under View, Proof Colors. So I showed this in other videos, how you do soft proofing. For this here, it's not necessary, there's not much difference, but this is also something you would need to do in this step. Yeah, and afterwards, I'll be ready, set for editing more photos, and I can be sure that what I do in those edits is properly represented on other screens, which are calibrated, and also later in print. So yeah, that's it. I hope you liked this video. It was longer than I thought it would be. Yeah, it's quite an involved topic, but as you saw, it's not that difficult. There's just some settings you need to make. You do them once, and then every time it's the same. The only thing you need is a proper calibration device. So I can recommend the ones from X-Rite. They're now distributed or sold by a company called Calibrite. It's basically a spin-off from X-Rite. So if you search for it, search for Calibrite, or yeah, use the ones from DataColor. I think they are similar in quality. And yeah, then you can also get a calibrated system and make sure you get accurate colors. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe for more. Yeah, and see you in the next video. Bye.